Hi everybody. So we're going to take a few minutes now and we're going to look a little bit more in depth at research. I know I had touched on gun control in the previous video, but I don't want to poach anything that you guys might actually be able to do research on yourselves, so we're not going to touch gun control anymore. If you want to do your own project on gun control, you're perfectly able to do so. Right now I'm going to work on global warming and climate change because that's not one of the options. So in watching this video, you're not going to learn anything about the topic. Well, you might learn some, I guess, but what you should be focusing on is the approach to research and how I do that, so that you can do the same thing with your own work. Okay, so let's just take a look at what I've done here. So I went into Opposing Viewpoints and I found 3 articles that I thought would be pretty solid. Global Warming and Climate Change, Earth Will Survive, and Politicians Use Climate Change as an Excuse to Limit Personal Freedoms. And I'm not going to go into how I made the documents or how I found them in Google Classroom. In Opposing Viewpoints, because that's all pretty easily found in the previous video. So if you need a refresher on how to do that, please stop this video, go back to the first one, and check that out. So I'm going to show you a little bit about how I annotated each article, and we're going to go from there. Okay, so global warming and climate change. That's the overview article here. So this one actually probably had the most facts that I wanted to use. And I just went in and I just highlighted things in Google Drive, and then I grabbed this highlighter color and I just picked the color that I wanted, in that case yellow. And when I came across a fact that I thought was useful, I would highlight it. So basically, as I'm reading through this, what I'm looking for, if I just went through my highlights, I'd have like a greatest hits kind of facts and ideas. I might not have as much supporting evidence behind those things or explanations of how they work, but the main ideas are all what I really focused on. So overwhelming scientific evidence supports the reality of both global warming and climate change, but a vocal minority disagree with the consensus conclusion that these trends are being driven by human activity. So in human language, that basically means that all the scientists in the world, or almost all of them, agree that this is happening, and that we are, well, just about everybody agrees that it's happening. And almost everybody agrees that we are contributing to the idea of global warming. And there are a few that say, no, yeah, it's happening, but it's not our fault, right? So opponents of this theory believe that current changes in climate and weather patterns are the result of natural cycles that have been repeated again and again over the course of Earth's history. And I'm actually going to come back to that idea in another article that I found from the New York Times. So they're like, yeah, it goes up and down. That's the way it is. So main ideas. And this is something that they did where they're just like, if you want the TLDR, too long, didn't read version of the article, this stuff, these bullet points are kind of it. So there's strong scientific evidence for global warming and climate change, but some people disagree the trends are anthropogenic or driven by human activity. That's kind of what we just read. The Earth's atmosphere contains several gases that trap heat from the sun in a phenomenon called the greenhouse effect. These gases are commonly called greenhouse gases and include carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide. Then go through these. The one that I highlighted was in June 2017, US President Donald Trump announced the United States would withdraw from the Paris Agreement, a 2015 global treaty aimed at limiting the rise in global temperatures that had been championed by his predecessor. And I left a note on that one. So with this one, instead of going up to the little highlighter, I went to the plus and said, this is a good reason to discuss this now. 2017 wasn't that long ago. That was 3 years ago. And we had just made a deal to try and get our emissions kind of under control. I'm gonna see if I can raise my chair up a little bit. Nope, I can't. And then we changed our mind. We're like, nah, or not. We could just not do that. So causes of climate change. Climate change scientists at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and other federal and international agencies recognize that these natural factors continue to play a role in climate change, but they generally agree that the impact of these factors alone does not explain the substantial recent rise in Earth's temperature. So before that was all about various things and reasons why climate goes up and down, right? And we're saying, okay, yeah, but it was going up and down, up and down and up. So people are more involved. And then I just highlighted more reasons why it's happening. and why most scientists are going. It's interesting that this particular article doesn't really list a whole lot of stuff against global warming as a thing. At this point, pretty much everybody agrees that it is a thing and that it's being caused by humans. So it just goes through the facts. So it's talking about greenhouse gases, and then like carbon dioxide is the one that's most common, but then methane is more powerful, 21 times as potent as carbon dioxide at trapping heat. That would be a pretty good fact to use. And then there's things like hydrofluorocarbons and perfluorocarbons, the HFCs and PFCs, and SF6. These gases, there's not very much of it, but they trap thousands of times more heat. So those are a big deal, and they do not occur in nature, which I highlighted right there. So predictions, like what's going to happen because of this. So at least 97% of actively publishing climate scientists around the world agree that human activities have contributed to rising global temperatures. At least 97. That means it's probably more than that. So like all the people that are like scientists, they all say this is happening. So that seemed like a pretty big deal, especially in comparison to the article that I found that tried to deny it's a big deal, mostly cited websites. So, ooh, a website. And then it gets into the fact that even though we're making these predictions, none of them are 100% accurate because it's a prediction, it's a guess. But they're pretty close, and deniers tend to use the fact that they're not 100% accurate to be like, so if it's not 100% right, it's 100% wrong. That kind of thing. I did highlight in red some of the opposite side that was in there. I just color-coded that to make it a little clearer to me. Like if I'm skimming through this, like, oh, yellow is just good facts, just general facts, and then red is like, okay, those are one side, those are about against. I probably could have done a better job if I'd planned it out before, but at first I was just highlighting stuff and all of it was on one side. And then when it switched sides, I was like, okay, let's switch colors. So that's kind of what I did. Again, with climate change and global warming, one of the reasons why I didn't give it to you guys as a topic is because the debate is basically done. Like there's still people complaining and complaining very loudly that it's either not a big deal or it is a big deal and it's not our fault, you know, but they're not winning that fight. So the ones that I gave you guys most of the time really do have two sides to the issue, whereas this one kind of doesn't. And this gets into the idea that it's cyclical, it goes up and down. Conservative donors, people that really don't want it to be real, are dumping lots of money into promoting the idea that it's not real. Like the Koch family donated $127 million to organizations to deny climate change, that kind of thing. And then back into most Americans accept that we are doing it, that it's a problem and we're making it happen. And then a little bit political stuff, 84% of Democrats, 27% of Republicans kind of agree with this stuff. And then people aged 18 to 35 are more likely than older respondents to believe that the media underestimates the threat of climate change. So young people think that the media is actually downplaying it rather than, or not downplaying, but not playing it up enough. And old people are like, nah, I had to walk through snow to get to school. I don't know, that kind of thing. All right, so then what are some of the effects? Hurricanes, droughts, wildfires, severe flooding. And then we had like category 5 hurricanes, 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019, which is like a big deal. So all these kind of things. I could always go back to this article and get more detailed facts if I wanted to in this area, but I highlighted just the key ideas there to kind of show me what I want. Loss of farmland, air quality, all these kind of things. And then into the international response. And I left a comment on this one just to point out where I was going with that. So we'll go real quick through the other two. Here's the article from the New York Times. Article commentary, definitely read this part first. This is not the article itself. This is the opposing viewpoints, people looking at it and giving you a little bit of a heads up, like what to look for in the article. One of the things that I highlighted is Adam Frank is a professor of astrophysics at the University of Rochester in Rochester, New York. And that's compared to the other article that, let's say, we'll put that back to 100%, that says that it's not a big deal. This guy is a syndicated columnist and author of several books. So they both are authors of books, but this guy just kind of like has a professional. He's a professional at expressing his opinion, and the other guy is a professional scientist. So Earth will survive. So the main point, these are some details, but then the main point I put in yellow is that humanity's survival depends on its ability to truly understand the workings of the biosphere and endeavor toward a harmonious relationship with the planet. So the idea that the planet will live on and there will probably be life on it, but we might not be that life. So understanding that that's what the point of the article is right from the get-go really helps. And then it's got some questions for you to think about as you're doing it. And then he started off with various like periods in Earth's history, like if somebody had landed on Earth 3 billion years ago and took his mask off, he'd instantly die because there's air on the planet but no oxygen, but there were things living on the planet. So like, hey, life goes on, just maybe not for us. And then goes through this whole idea of how like life affects climate over and over again, that idea, which is one of the things that gets denied, is like, well, maybe it's happening, but it's not our fault. We don't have anything to do with it. And then this is, he's saying, you know, all the poor polar bears and stuff like that. In a global thing, well, maybe the polar bears will die, maybe we'll die. But we really ought to realize that it's us that we're trying to save. So it's not altruism, it's ourselves. So he's playing on the pathos, which is an emotional appeal. Those are kind of like where you try to scare people into doing something, or you make them think that, oh, all the smart people do this, or there's various emotional appeals. So in your slideshow, you're going to want to do some emotional kind of stuff, and we'll look at that in a little bit more detail in a subsequent video. But this one, I wrote it down that's pathos. Basically, the triangle that we're looking at is ethos, pathos, and logos. So one is, ethos is all about how reliable are you as a source. Like you'll notice I put on a shirt with a collar today. There's a t-shirt sitting on the floor that I was just wearing, but I wanted to look a little bit more professional, so I was thinking about my ethos there. Logos is all about logical facts, statistics, that kind of thing. And then pathos is the emotional kind of appeal that like gets you by the gut and pulls you in. You need all of those because people don't listen to facts unless they're emotionally charged. But once that emotional charge is worn off, if you don't have any facts to support yourself, they kind of lose interest too. Or they don't believe you anymore. They might believe you for a minute, but not forever. So that goes through that. And then the last one is politicians use climate change. In blue again, I started to make blue my ethos color. So this is why we should believe him. He's a syndicated columnist. Or at least that's what we should know about the person who's writing this, as opposed to this one is the astrophysicist, right? And his main point is that politicians and the mainstream media encourage public outrage and generate panic over climate change by promoting the opinions and predictions of alarmists while ignoring the views of skeptics. And they're overestimating the panic, or the impact. He starts right off by talking about it as a climate change panic, which I said was an emotionally charged, like a dismissive word. If you're going to talk about like, ooh, nobody wants to think that they're panicking, right? Like there's a difference between panic and concern and like doing the right thing, but it's like, oh, and they're panicking. So that's an emotionally charged kind of thing. That's pathos right there. And then he seems to base most of it off of this one report by James Hansen, and ignores the idea that 97% of scientists not only agree that it's happening, but it's caused by us. And then lots of dismissive stuff about like, oh, well, he said there were going to be like worse hurricanes and stuff. Like the list of what didn't happen is long and tedious, except for the previous article that I read, you know, global warming and climate change. It's right there that they're category 5 hurricanes, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. So some of it, so I left a note saying what that did happen. So this part with a more difficult article, sometimes what I might do is highlight a chunk and then write it in my own words to make sure that it actually makes sense. So this part is, he's saying that it's, people make it sound worse than it is so that people will react. If you tell people that, oh, in 50 years, the planet might be slightly different and some things will die, his idea is that they won't do anything. So you need to make it seem like a bigger deal. Like, oh, it's going to happen in 10 years. And if we don't change in 10 years, then we're all going to die. And that's what's going on. And it's not actually true. We're just trying to, like, I don't know, make it seem like a big deal. And the source for that, let me just highlight that in blue because that really should, is whatsupwiththat.com. Yeah. And then his second source is climatedepot.com. And my note was second use of a website as support, no peer-reviewed journal articles or anything like that. Like, he's not citing scientists for the most part. This guy is a physicist who apparently posted on this whatsupwiththat.com. But I don't know. That doesn't sound very official to me. So that's the kind of like reading that you need to do. And then he starts going into this idea that, oh, well, you know, ice went up 33% in 2013 and 2014. But he doesn't talk about how much had it gone down before that. And then how much did it go down after that? So like maybe, you know, ice was going down and then we had a little blip for 2 years and it kept going down. That's critical thinking, like my critical reading, trying to like understand whether what he's saying actually makes sense or whether he's just cherry picking his facts, which is where you're like, oh, I'm going to take this bit and this bit, but I'm going to leave out everything else. And then it sounds really good until you look at it. And then robbing us of more of our freedoms. He doesn't really get into what freedoms we're being robbed of in this effort to make global warming, you know, to fight global warming, or why anybody would want to steal our freedoms. Like, what's the benefit, you know? But it is scary. Oh, people are trying to steal your freedoms. So again, that's pathos right there. And he relies on pathos a lot in this article by trying to like belittle and using kind of like emotionally charged words and stuff to make it sound like people are being either on one side manipulative and power grabbing, that's the politicians, and the rest of the people are just being like sheep, like, tell us what to do, we're scared, you know? So that's that whole pathos kind of thing. It's neither of these articles, Earth Will Survive or Politicians Use Climate Change, relies as heavily on logos as this one does. This one is, the overview is full of facts and stuff. Earth Will Survive sort of assumes you know most of that stuff and that you're reasonably familiar with it. And then, I mean, it does go into facts and stuff, like talking about how the Earth has been through various cycles in life and stuff. The other one, I think even less though, is got kind of shoddy support. So that's what I kind of went through. Now I've highlighted all this, I have it all together, and I can pretty easily start to lift facts into my slideshow. And the next video will all be about how to organize your slideshow and how to put it together and make it into a compelling argument to support your case. Until next time, I'll see you around.